So we have a theist. This theist is from Arizona. His name is Christopher. He feels that we should not debunk religious systems because it makes people worse. They would be more likely to steal or cheat, more prone to drugs and alcohol. Christopher from Arizona, welcome to Talk Heathen.
Hello. I think you have no evidence for that assertion.
What was that?
I think you have no evidence for the assertion that without religion, people would steal more.
Oh, actually, I have, experimental evidence that, yes, religious people are less likely to steal. They're more likely to contribute to charity. They're less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. They're less likely to...
Is that a study that's done
teenage
on...
pregnancy.
Is that a study that's done in like a society where the dominant there isn't a dominant religion, and then comparing it to a society where there is? Or is this like just looking at Americans, where the vast majority of people are religious and you get punished by society for not being religious, so are more likely to be isolated and turn to crime because of struggling to live? Just potentially guessing.
They've done it cross-culturally. They've done it cross-culturally and intra-culturally. And
that's convenient, isn't it? This is a really thorough experiment that we just have to trust you, Christopher. Has been concluded and peer-reviewed.
It wasn't a single experiment. There are multiple cross-cultural studies. For instance, Pew in 2019, you can literally Google Pew religion's relationship to happiness and civic engagement and health around the world. And they look at about 20 different countries and find extremely large effect sizes for the effect of religion across health.
I think there might be there might be a bit of confirmation bias there, Christopher, because I've looked at studies that say the exact opposite. So it looks to me like you've seen something on Pew studies or something somewhere and just jumped to this conclusion. If you have religion, you're going to be less of a criminal, or you're going to have a more moral life in some way, which is not just wrong, it's also kind of insulting.
Could I say something? You know that in a...
Oh, sorry, am I not allowed to talk? Is Talk Heathen just Christopher's channel? To have a conversation, I need to be able to respond. And Katie's responded, and now I've responded, and now you can respond. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Your response was that I'm biased, which is a complete ad hominem, and is not an argument whatsoever, because I could just as easily appeal to your biases for your data. So I'm talking about comparing the largest data sets and the largest effect sizes and coming up with what is actually true.
And you're asking us to take your word for the fact that you've done this?
No, I just told you where to find the study.
Well, we can leave it to the Talk Heathen viewers to go and do their own research and find out whether what you say is true. But I'm here to say that it sounds like you've again cherry-picked, and there's been some confirmation bias here, because when I look at those sorts of figures, I often find that, for example, in Scandinavian countries, compared to more religious countries, the crime rates tend to be lower. That's what I've seen. You could call it confirmation bias. But again, this whole idea that you need religion, I mean, what does it say about someone if you need belief in a God who will cast you into eternal flames in order to be a good person?
About the belief. It isn't necessarily having...
I didn't say it was about the belief, but what does it say? What does it say about
that if somebody
the
has
person
to believe in God in order to act morally? You just said that. You just said if somebody needs to believe in God.
I don't want to live. I don't want to live in a society where that's the case. I would shudder at the thought, and I live in a Catholic country, by the way. I would shudder at the thought that all of my neighbors only aren't killing me and only aren't raping me because they believe in the Pope and they believe in Mother Mary and they believe in God. I dignify them with more humanity than that.
It has nothing to do with that. What I suggest is that you look more closely at the experimental psychology and sociology and evolutionary
psychology
biology of religion, because what they can I finish my sentence, or do you want to?
Yeah, you can. I don't have to take it seriously, though.
That's fine.
Oh, he's gone.
That's fine. I would like to just tell the truth. That it actually has very, very little to do with the explicitly held quote-unquote religious belief, but it has all to do with the religious participation in these religious systems cross-culturally and historically, evolutionarily. That is where the benefits come from, is from these extremely tight social bonds in trusting communities where interpersonal trust and social capital is higher than in any other type of secular, non-religious group that attempts to contrive tight social bonds with norms and things like that.
Sounds like a lot of jumping to conclusions, though, because, I mean, even if you found out that religious people were more likely to be happy and you didn't, and you managed to control for the fact that most countries are majority religious and often punish atheists, you would still then have the situation of which way round is causing that. Maybe people who are more likely to be happy and people who are more likely to be in strong family units are more likely to be religious because that causes active participation in the society that's set up for you.
So there's a really cool study where they look at Ashkenazi Jews, a single community of Ashkenazi Jews, where they look at the secular Jews and the religious non-secular Jews within the same community, and they find the same effects. So what I'm telling you is that this kind of, whatever, like that I'm just throwing out bullshit data is completely wrong. You can look at Richard Sosis and look at his review article titled "More Than Belief," and I'm telling you guys that you have the idea that all that religion is these bullshit beliefs is completely flies in the face of everyone who legitimately studies this.
So from your study that you mentioned earlier, the Pew Research one, there's a quote here that says, while the data presented in this report indicate that there are links between religious activity and certain measures of well-being in many countries, the numbers do not prove that going to religious services is directly responsible for improving people's lives. Rather, it could be that certain kinds of people tend to be more active in multiple types of activities, secular as well as religious, many of which may provide physical or psychological benefits. Moreover, such people may be more active partly because they are happier and healthier rather than the other way round.
That's what I was saying before about confirmation bias. Very easy to come across some figures and think, oh, these agree with my view, and just tout them as though this is your slam dunk evidence. And then when Katy goes and drills down a little bit, it's not as simple as that. So that's I think confirmation bias. Actually, it might be worthwhile you researching that a little bit.
I wasn't basing my entire thesis off of a single experiment.
No, you're basing it on evolutionary biology and philosophy and all sorts. We get that.
Sentence, or are you just going to interrupt continuously, which you warned me not to do from the beginning?
Like interrupting.
Okay, so what I was going to say was that if you look at the psychology and neuroscience of religiosity, one of the worst possible things that you can do to an individual psychologically is, one of the worst processes that they can go through psychologically is apostasy. It has one of the absolute worst outcomes for so many different variables as far as drug and alcohol abuse.
That's interesting you should say that, Christopher, because you're speaking to an apostate. You're speaking to somebody who about 10 years ago figured out that what he'd been told his entire life about every single person around him being worthy of imminent destruction at Armageddon might not be true, that it might not be true that a leadership based in New York was invisibly chosen by Jesus in 1919. That might not be true. And coming to these conclusions, realize that actually it's actually better and more healthy to not have a cult in New York micromanage his life and actually do something about it and leave. And not just leave, but speak out about the fact that this group is exploitative and abusive and manipulative, which is something I continue to do on YouTube and elsewhere. So since I started doing that, I've personally found, anecdotally, that my life is far more satisfying and enriching. I have a far more healthy view of the people around me because I understand how finite their lives are and how dependent we all are on each other for making our lives better and making our communities better. And yet what you've just said is that my life has deteriorated since I became an apostate because I apparently needed my belief in Jehovah's Witnesses to be a good person and to lead a happy life, which hasn't really been my experience. So to stop myself from interrupting you, I actually muted you, and now I will unmute.
Thank you. Oh, okay, so what you're doing, this is not what I said at all. What you're doing is you're taking what I'm saying when I'm talking about a statistical average, and you're saying that it doesn't apply to you as an individual, which of course I wouldn't claim whatsoever. I'm talking about means of groups of people and means of studies, both intraculturally and cross-culturally. And it has nothing to do with your personal experience as an individual and your personal.
We're not talking about, so you're not talking about individual experiences. Everyone just has to everyone has to just base their decisions as to whether they apostatize or not on your data,
average.
on your averages, on your formulae, on your philosophy studies. That's what we should be basing our decisions on.
No, what I'm saying is, well, hold on. If you're going to implement, like, let's say, vaccines for a nation, you're going to do so based on statistical averages of effect sizes and efficacy, okay? You're not going to say, well, this one person had some horrible immune reaction or a blood clot, so therefore we should not give the vaccine to millions of people. That's absurd.
So if we're trying to make the population... If we're trying to make the population happier and less likely to commit crime, and we say, wow, we've done some studies and we find out that religious people are better off than atheists, then, as the people in charge creating the system, we could say, well, there's all these different religions, and it actually doesn't matter which religion we pick. It's just any religion on average makes people happier. So we might as well invent a religion, because all of the religions that there are, that I've personally encountered anyway, have a lot of crap things in them. And we could just make up a new religion, and we can teach everyone it, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not, because we're just improving well-being here. But that's kind of the main point in doing that. So we'll have this religion, and we'll say that, this person is basically a god, and women are inferior, and all this kind of stuff that comes with religion. But it's just a little bit better. It's like Christianity, but like a little bit better. Is that a moral thing to do? Is that something is that a good thing? Like, if we just created a new religion and forced it on a population to improve alcoholism rates or something?
No. So I would say that, sure, once you accept that both intra-culturally and cross-culturally, that religious individuals and groups are much happier, healthier, and are more engaged in civic duty and charity and things like that, then you can move forward and try to discern which religions at a global level are better or worse than one another.
We could make a better. Look, my point is that if we're then picking which religion to teach people based on which one makes people happiest, why pick a pre-existing one when we could engineer one? We could make up a whole new set of lies. We could make up a whole
worship Smurfs. System. We need to worship Smurfs and follow the Smurfs because the Smurfs are God's one true religion, and we need to worship them and listen to everything they say. This is the new truth that will make everyone more moral. Is that what you're suggesting?
Or at least more happy?
No, it's a very simple answer, and you can look at any. You can just look at.
Yes, not as sophisticated as your answers.
Whatever contrived religions, and compare them to religions that have been around for tens of thousands of years, and you can see that.
Also, age. The longer you've been around, the more valid your morals will be.
No.
So it's not just. So we're excluding Scientology, are we? We're excluding Nixium, all of the new religions. You're zeroing in on well-established religions.
Okay, no. So first of all, in the literature where people actually study this shit, they discriminate between cults and religions based on certain metrics.
I haven't studied anything.
Yeah, I know you don't. Well, yes, if you consider Scientology or Nixium a religion, then yes, you are not.
And now we get down to brass tacks, because I sense that it's not just about any religion. It's not just about any set of morals. You told our call screener that you're a theist. I think that this is all about your personal bias towards a particular religion that you think offers the best morals. If I had to hazard a guess, it would be Christianity. But before I unmute you, here's my whole problem with your premise. What you're suggesting, if you replace religion in your argument with lies, your argument is people need religion in order to be moral. If you replace religion with lies, which is what we're saying it is, people need lies to be moral. Again, what does that say about people? I prefer to dignify my fellow humans by saying you can have a moral, meaningful, satisfying life without me lying to you or without believing anyone else's lies. And you are effectively insulting not just me, but everybody by saying you wouldn't know how to function in society without being lied to and without believing lies. And I give you more dignity than to suggest that that's true of you. And I give my fellow humans more dignity than to suggest that that's true of them. And now I will unmute.
Okay, so I'm unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess what I would say is that you must either have not been listening or completely misunderstood what I basically began with, was that what religion itself is not simply reducible to beliefs in propositions.
Oh, God.
That is not what religion is. Religion is a participatory group with it's centered around behavior.
When you said that earlier, though,
and ritual.
You also said that no secular groups had. I can't remember if you said no a secular group could match like the social aspects of religion, or no religious or no secular group has. But so which one was it? Was it no group could or no group has?
Probably both. And so
the assertion that no group could is kind of saying that the belief part of the religion is like a core component of it.
Indeed.
So it's either core and essential or it's not. And if it's not, then we can recreate it in
and you've already dismissed newer religions like Scientology and NXIVM. So you're already narrowing it down to whatever religions that you deem to be not cults. So it's all incredibly arbitrary on your side. So it actually turns out that it is belief driven.
So
and now he's laughing.
So one thing, it's not
okay. Off you go. Sorry, no. Stick by the original premise. Don't just go moving the goalposts. When we say religion, don't just say, "Oh, it's not to do with beliefs." And when we say, "I think that your preference is for a certain religion," oh God. That was so frustrating.
I think that like when someone makes the argument that religion is good because traditionally all the religions we have like all this like social stuff and networks and worship and all this kind of stuff that makes people feel good and makes people have a strong society. Then you can either say, well, we can just recreate that without these unjustified beliefs, and then they will then say either, oh, well, you need the beliefs, and then they're making the belief argument, and they're not really making the society argument, or they say this can't be done, and then they're making some assertion that somehow the belief makes the like social aspect special. But basically what I'm trying to say here is if you're arguing that going to church makes people's lives better, then you could go to some kind of church without having some belief that's unjustified. We could just recreate that in a secular way.
I do run into these people. Thinking off the top of my head, there's people like Douglas Murray who make these arguments. And frankly, it's just so insulting to everyone. Again, what does it say about our fellow primates if the only thing that's stopping them from coming and murdering or raping us is their belief in lies? I'd rather dignify people and say, no, actually, you can be a good person without believing in lies.
Or even if it's not that extreme, even if he was just saying, oh, it makes you a bit happier. But I don't really know. If someone was like, oh, I could convince you of a lie and it would make you happier, I don't know if I'd want that, because I mean, how many lies would I accept to be happier and happier? How many like things would I of the world would I just start denying reality in order to be happier? Like, I guess being happy is a good thing, but I guess it's not the only aspect of well-being, and it's not the only aspect of your life.
Yeah, I've actually said before on my channel that in some ways I'm happier, in some ways I'm not. But I'd still rather not believe lies if you don't mind, you know. So
I actually think that I would rather there was some kind of afterlife than not, and I'm not in that situation, and I wished I did believe in some kind of afterlife. So please call in and convince me, because that will make me happier. But I can't. There just isn't.